What's up, everybody? Welcome back to FFT. I'm Trevor, and if you're somebody that's walking away from your draft frustrated because it didn't go the way that you wanted it to, I know how you feel. But it may not be as bad as you think. Let's check it out. Hey guys, I apologize. I'm just coming off of being sick, so my voice is a little bit raspier than normal, so just bear with me. But let's go ahead and jump right into this. We've all been there. We've all had bad drafts. We all end up with teams that aren't ideal or players that we don't even want on our roster. We've done mock draft after mock draft after mock draft, preparing for these drafts, and you have this sort of expectation of what your team could be, but it never quite ends up the way that you expected or wanted to happen at the very end. And so let's take a look at some options and some kind of ways to navigate this issue and maybe identify some ways that or some reasons why your team might not be as bad as you originally thought. So let's go ahead and jump right into the first point. What type of league are you in? Obviously, having a bad draft is going to affect dynasty leagues and keeper leagues more than it will affect redraft leagues. Redraft league, you redraft players year to year. You're not keeping anybody, so having a bad team, even if it truly is the worst team in the world, you can't do anything with it. Your waivers aren't going your way. It's just for a year, and you can fix it the following year. With keepers and dynasty leagues, it's a little bit more dire, and so those are the leagues that we're going to focus on today. With keeper leagues, you're keeping kind of 1 to 3 players from year to year, and so if you don't have great players on your team, and you're not keeping anybody, everybody else in your league probably is, and it's going to give them a leg up come next season. And so that could be detrimental. And then obviously with dynasty leagues as well, where you're keeping players from year to year to year, it's going to really hurt if you're not able to find ways to navigate this sort of roster dilemma. So let's go into I guess it's really the first point after identifying your type of league, but it's really the second point is be patient. Let the season start and see where the chips fall. Player value really isn't determined until the season actually starts and you see these players actually perform on the real stage. See them out there, not preseason, not training camp, but out there playing against real teams. All this ADP game, average draft position of these players, is all projection. It's where people think these players are going to land based off of their team, their schedule, their performance from last year. All of these things kind of go into ADP, but nobody really knows. No one knows if Christian Watson is gonna blow up this year. No one knows if Khalil Herbert is really gonna be the starter. No one knows how long Breece Hall is gonna be out and if he's even gonna be the RB1 when he comes back. All of these things are unknown. So let it ride out. All right. I've done this in the past before where I hated some players that I ended up with, and out of just anger and frustration, I traded these players away for players that I thought were better options for the year, and I ended up kicking myself later because the players that I traded away actually ended up doing incredibly well, and I just needed to wait until week 1 and week 2 to actually see their true potential. So be patient, let the season start. Don't start any crazy trades or go jump to the waivers too early. Let's see if this player actually can perform. Also, injuries can happen. If you picked up somebody that's an RB2 on their team, maybe they jump into the RB1 slot. Say they're the backup to Christian McCaffrey. Their value shoots up if Christian McCaffrey hurts himself week 1 or week 2. All these injuries happen all the time. So pay attention to it and be prepared to shift, and also know when players are rising and falling based off injuries. That's a big thing to pay attention to during the season. Also, teams get better over the season as well. Schedules can affect performance for players, all these sorts of things. I follow other podcasts and other channels that talk about how a wide receiver at a certain team may not do well because the defense that they're playing is a top 10 defense for the first 4 weeks of play, and then after that they may skyrocket up because they're not playing as tough competition. All those sorts of things play into the fact that this player may not be as great early and may do better later, and vice versa. So you got to kind of read schedules. You got to read between the lines when it comes to these players as well. Don't be too fast to throw them away or trade them away. Be patient. All right, number 3, identify your team needs. Why is your team weak? You don't want to trade away the strengths of your team and make everything kind of bottom out. You want to identify what's going on with your team and actually where are the weak spots. This is part of being patient as well. You're not going to know the weak spots before the season even starts. So just lay low for a bit, let it play out. What's struggling on your rosters? The quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Is it none of the above? And it's really just depth that you're struggling to fill your flex spots on weeks where your players have buys? Is it that your players have great weeks but they're inconsistent, and so everyone kind of fluctuates together, and there's weeks where maybe Derrick Henry's doing great but Garrett Wilson isn't doing great, and so you never really reach your maximum potential? Do you need better players with higher floors? What do you need on your team? What is actually going on within your roster that you need to fix? Don't just go, hey, man, Keenan Allen isn't doing as great as I thought. I need to get rid of him. Well, hold on a second. If your wide receiver room is okay and Keenan Allen is just a piece of that puzzle, identify that and figure out, okay, do I need another backup piece to Keenan Allen on the weeks that maybe he's injured or isn't doing as great or has a hard matchup? All those sorts of things are worth paying attention to. Also, on the flip side of that, identify the league needs. So this is really number 4, I guess. Identify your league's needs. And what I mean by that is when it comes to trading and kind of negotiating with these other teams, where are they struggling? What are some things that they need? If you have players that could help fill holes in their roster, maybe the value of that player you're trading away actually goes up a little bit and you can get more for them because you're trading them to a team that really needs a running back, let's say, that you're trading away. Whereas if you're trading a running back to a team that doesn't really need a running back, you're not going to get the full value out of that player because they don't identify that player as high of a need for their team as maybe another team in your league. So maybe pay attention to that. Does somebody in your league or do you have a player that somebody in your league really wants? I'm in a league right now where somebody really wanted Patrick Mahomes and they were willing to spend an arm and a leg to get them. Maybe that's worth identifying early on in the season so that that's somebody that you can trade away or hold on to for a big bag at midway through the season. Okay. Number 5, waiver wires. Waiver wires are huge, and I'm going to go down through a list of kind of people that were picked up last year that were game winners and league kind of playoff game changers for their team. But waiver wire is for the people that care and won't give up. You're not going to find people on waivers if you're not paying attention to games week to week. If you don't care about your team and you've given up, what you're going to just be seeing people in your league picking up people off the waivers week to week, and you're going to go, oh, if only I had picked them up. I didn't realize they were great. Don't give up. That's part of the game. If you give up, you're not going to identify these people, and you're not going to be able to be competitive and go after these people. Don't give up. Pay attention. And this is really where watching games comes in handy for waiver wires. You might see somebody go down as a quarterback and their backup come in, and you're actually able to see, like Jordan Love last year. I watched him play a couple games. Same with Brock Purdy, actually. I watched them both play a couple games due to injury from the other quarterbacks or poor performances, and they came in and played a couple games, and I identified some talent in those guys. And so I put in waivers for them. I put in based off of what I thought their value was, and I ended up acquiring both of those guys for my Dynasty League. I'm extremely happy that I did because now they're both starters for their teams. And if either one of those guys ends up doing incredibly well, I got them off the waiver wire, and I didn't even have to spend draft capital on these guys to get them. So paying attention to these games is incredibly important. Here's a list of waiver wire players from last year that were game changers for the teams that they ended up on. Quarterbacks: Brock Purdy, Justin Fields ended up as the quarterback 6 on the season. Geno Smith ended up as the quarterback 5 on the season last year. Jared Goff ended up on the quarterback 10 as the quarterback 10 last year. All of these guys were on waiver wires at some point in the majority of leagues last year. And that's quarterbacks. These are game-changing positions for teams. So quarterback 6, 5, 10 off of waiver wires, pay attention. You can end up with somebody like this year in your league. Running backs, Jerick McKinnon, Cam Akers. He helped teams win late in the season. He absolutely was a game changer for his teams. Deonta Foreman, he was big too at the end of last year. Wide receivers, Zay Jones, Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson was on waiver wires week 3 last year. So regardless of where you are in the season, there's always somebody there that can be picked up and be added value to your team. Tight ends, Evan Ingram, after week 8, he popped off. He did incredibly well starting week 8, and he was a playoff sort of changer for the teams that he was on. Cole Kmet, he became Justin Fields' number 1 target after Mooney went down and got hurt. So there are players in every position that can help your team win and be players that really impact the season and impact the year for you. You just got to be willing to pay attention, do the research, and put in based off of what you think their value is, especially if you're using Fab for waiver wires. And then number 6, trades. Obviously, this is a big deal for adjusting your roster. If you're not able to find people off waivers, if you're not acquiring them because you're not putting in enough, or depending on how you do waivers, sometimes it goes back and forth, and maybe it's just you didn't end up with a good waiver pickup. Trading is your next best option. But there are a couple things to be cautious of when trading. Don't trade while emotional. You don't want to be in the app angry that somebody didn't perform and just I'll get rid of him for whoever. Just send me a trade. I'm sending him away for cheap. Calm down, cool off a little bit, figure out the true value of this individual. Go back to one of my earlier points. Figure out people in your league that may want this player or have need for this sort of position. Identify those people and trade them away for their highest potential value. So look for that. Look for later season values as well. So maybe you've identified your team just isn't going to do well earlier in the season. Well, maybe try to identify players on other teams that are backups or maybe rookies that might have more play time, might have higher receptions or more targets later in the season. Those are players that you might want to acquire when they're cheap before they start doing well later in the season. Okay, and then also do research. Look for possibilities or high risk injury players like Cooper Kupp. Maybe you have Cooper Kupp on your team. He's prone to injury. Maybe you can trade him away for somebody that's less risky and potentially higher value. Maybe you want to identify rookies. That requires some research too, like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. People knew that, or some people out there knew that they were going to do incredibly well just based off of all the research that they had done and the teams that they landed on. If you're willing to put in that work too and kind of identify those players, it can help you out as well. Also, if you're dynasty, look for additional rookie draft picks for the following year or vice versa. Be willing to trade away draft picks for known commodities within your league. It depends on what you want. A lot of players like having draft picks and draft capital for rookies, but more often than not, it's better to have the known values and the known performance or the known players with high performance than taking a risk on somebody new. Sometimes it's worth doing that. So maybe that's worth it in your dynasty league. Keep an eye out for that. And then last but not least, it's not the end of the world. Don't give up. It really is all about playoffs when it comes to fantasy football. You just need to make the playoffs. We actually, in one of my leagues, we have we do payouts for one of the highest overall scorers in the regular season. And the reason we do that is because playoffs is a crapshoot. As long as you make playoffs, anything can happen in the playoffs. You could be one of the worst teams in the regular season, but as long as you make playoffs, like I said in the waiver pickups earlier, A lot of players end up doing really well at the end of the season and can be game changers at the end of the season and help you win playoffs when you started off extremely poorly and you had no shot of winning, and it just kind of turns around and you end up doing incredibly well by the end of the year. So don't give up, make it to playoffs, do whatever you can to make it to playoffs and get that championship. You never know what can happen. You really don't. But anyway, that's it, guys. I appreciate you sticking around. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Did I miss something? Is it as dire as you guys think, or is there a silver lining when it comes to drafts and how making the most out of it? But I appreciate you guys being here. Until next time, I'll see you later. See you guys.